I think the accomplishment that very brave personnel from the United States government were able to realize yesterday is a defining moment in the war against Al-Qaeda, the war on terrorism, by decapitating the head of the snake known as Al-Qaeda. It is going to have, I think, very important reverberations throughout the area. This does not mean that we are putting down our guard as far as Al-Qaeda is concerned. It may be a mortally wounded tiger that still has some life in it.
Welcome back to Hardball. That's Homeland Security Director John Brennan, of course, saying we've cut off the head of the snake called Al-Qaeda. But is Al-Qaeda still a threat to the U.S.? Former Senator Bob Kerrey was a member of the 9/11 Commission and was a Navy SEAL in Vietnam. Tyler Drumheller is the former chief of operations for the CIA in Europe. Tyler, I want to ask you about this. You know, I try to visualize. In America, we have crime and we have organized crime. So I don't want to care about just terrorists who feel like being terrorists. I want to know about organized terrorists. What's left of Al-Qaeda?
What's left of Al-Qaeda are these affiliate groups, Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, and groups that are inspired by bin Laden but not controlled by him. Because after 9/11, the invasion of Afghanistan really destroyed what passed for the management infrastructure of Al-Qaeda. But these groups are every bit as dangerous, and some way more dangerous because they're smaller, less and harder to find in some ways.
Can they pull off these Alistair McLean style, you know, we're going up and doing something big with a combination of hijacking and buildings and all? Are they capable of the big operation, these groups that are still out there? Are they just going to blow up whatever?
I mean, you don't want to discount that, but really what they're looking at is there was an attack in Marrakesh last Saturday on a cafe where a lot of French tourists go to. And that was done by Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb. That's pretty typical of the type of thing.
Did they blow up a cafe or what?
Cafe and killed like 17 French terrorists, of tourists.
Tourists.
Yeah.
And that's what we're facing right now.
That's what we're facing. And they're also doing that because they're trying to establish themselves in this new era in the Middle East.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last point while I exhaust what you know. KSM, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, was he the mastermind, as you know it, he's called that, of 9/11? And what's the role, the connection between the mastermind and the guy we killed yesterday, bin Laden?
Well, I think KSM was the ops planner. He figured
it out.
He had been
Get some planes, run them into the World Trade Center in the Pentagon.
He had also been in the United States, so he understood how things work in the United States. He was one of the few members of Al-Qaeda.
Who came up with the idea of using airplanes?
They've been looking at that since the mid-'90s. The blind sheikh, you know, they were going to crash a plane into CIA headquarters in 1995.
When you go to bed at night and you worry about America, what do you worry about now with Al-Qaeda not having that guy anymore?
I worry about these small groups attacking airplanes and individuals. It's more of a smaller, but it's just as bad, just as dangerous if you're in the wrong place.
And what goes on at the TSA? I travel maybe a couple of times a week. That stuff's really important. They're still aiming at an airplane. Would like to get on a plane and blow it up.
That's really important because even if they don't stop the terrorists, a lot of what they do discourages them. It's just they have to be careful. They can't get too far over into sort of the crazy things, and that makes it.
Senator, it's great having you on because I respect so much your service to the country as a SEAL, and I just think about the training these guys go through. And you must have been thinking, having been through one of these kinds of incredible operations, give me your perspective, just generally as a senator, as a politician, as president of a college, looking at this thing yesterday.
Well, I mean, I heard Mike and Bob talking earlier. I mean, it was a textbook operation and it went perfectly. Sometimes they run perfectly and sometimes they don't. So, and if to produce the action that we had, last night, I mean, it takes 20, 25 years of training and preparation. The decision with Goldwater Nichols to create these joint operation forces, I think, is a big part of it. I think an awful lot of work since 9/11 has been done to train and prepare people for this kind of operation. So it didn't just happen that President Obama makes a decision to call these guys and say, we want you to go on this op. There's been an awful lot of work to bring him to this day. The quality of people coming into the teams are superb. They had great training prior to the op itself. They had a great opportunity, thanks to good intelligence, to be able to run test operations against the building that they had built as a prototype. So an awful lot of people had their hands in this thing to make it possible for these guys to be successful. But Chris, the thing you got to remember, and both Bob and Mike were talking about it earlier, tomorrow they could go on another operation. It fails. Are we going to call them up before Congress and ask them what went wrong? We're celebrating their heroism and their success. But on these kinds of operations, oftentimes just the opposite happens. So I think we need to give them an awful lot of credit. credit, and an awful lot of credit goes to the professionals who collected the intelligence and did the work for years and years to enable them to do this operation. But I don't think anybody should suffer the illusion that these guys can be called in every single time and bat 1,000.
Wow, that's smart. Let me ask you about this tower. It seems like just common sense. 9/11, don't want to forget it.
Right.
Thugs, 14 of the 19 guys that did this were basically thugs. They were just told, kill the people in the plane, keep them away from the, we're going to take over the cockpit. We got some smart guys here. We're going to fly the planes. They got enough training. You guys' job is to cut throats, right? So there's two kinds of terrorists. There's the smart guys who may not even go in the operation, right? And then there's the guys that are willing to cut throats. So tell me about that. How many guys are sitting in rooms right now drinking coffee or in hookah pipes or whatever, thinking about how to kill us?
Well, there's an unlimited supply of people like that, of the thugs.
Unlimited? Oh, thugs. There's lots of thugs.
There's lots of thugs. The smart guys are much rarer. And you also have to have people that have been through the training. They have people that have been through some kind of training to show them how to build the bombs, how to organize themselves. And
this kind of monkey bar stuff. We always show this stock footage. I always wonder, is that what we're afraid of? Guys that can run along, obstacle courses. I get the feeling I'm more worried the guy who's got a master's degree from MIT and knows how to build an incredible bomb.
That's an Al-Qaeda recruitment video, but
it's not just to make him feel hefty.
The real danger, another real danger, Chris, is a group like Hezbollah, which is. You're
laughing, Bob, because you had to do that to get into SEALs, right? Is that?
Well, no. I mean, you take the guy that actually was the leader of the attack on September 11th, Mohammed Atta. I mean, if he had gone to the cafe in Hamburg where he was planning this thing a couple of years ahead of time, you wouldn't have recognized him as a military operative because he has no military background. He was an unhappy student. He was from Egypt. He was planning this thing, and he shopped for the best flight schools by going onto the internet. So the vulnerabilities, in my view, the vulnerabilities have been substantially reduced after 9/11. They're still present. I think this is an indication that we have a tremendous amount of capability, and the success that came out of it comes from that capability. But now, in my view, you got to focus on Egypt. You got to focus on Tunisia. You got to focus on building democratic regimes, which is the number one enemy of Al-Qaeda.
I keep thinking about this. The kid, the guy who's 20 years old now is a terrorist, thug or brain power behind it, whatever. 10 years ago was a 10-year-old kid. And 9/11 was 10 years ago. I keep saying to people, you can't kill all terrorists. You have to kill the reason they want to be terrorists. Is a big part of this.
And that's right. And I think the big issue now in the Middle East is, for a while, right after 9/11, bin Laden represented the poor people of the Middle East railing against these corrupt regimes.
Who hated their parents.
And hated their parents.
Right.
Now these people are in demonstrations against the dictators and the kings.
I root for them.
No, wait a minute. They're demonstrating against dictators that we supported, that were putting them in prison, putting them in jail, that was creating an awful lot of the discontent that we've been facing. So now's the time for us to get on the side of democracy, get inside of the forces that believe, in fact, that they can govern themselves and create their own opportunities.
Now, these guys don't want to overthrow Mubarak and Gaddafi to put a caliphate in place.
That's correct.
I love your politics, Bob Kerrey. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
It feels like the 60s. I feel great. We're on the side of the people. At the ramparts against the old order. Thank you, Bob Kerrey, for coming on the show. Senator Kerrey, thank you for your service again, sir. And you, Tyler Drumheller, thank you so much. Up next, let's get into the politics of this thing. It's fascinating. A commander-in-chief being commander-in-chief. Tough guy to take on. It's a long way to the election, but you got to think that killing bin Laden, the way we did it so cleanly, so well done, makes this guy hard to beat. Are the Republicans going to get serious now and stop doing their clown show and start looking for somebody who could be commander-in-chief of this country and take him on? You're watching Hardball on MSNBC.